Welcome back, fellow adventurers, to another episode of the Corner of Story and Game. Today, I'm delighted to have Scott Rogers back for another chat. With a career spanning AAA game development, board game designs, and teaching at prestigious institutions, Scott never fails to bring the goods and offer up those insights. Today, we're going to talk about both the lessons he's learned and the lessons he's taught. So, Scott, thank you for joining me.
It is my pleasure, Gerald. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I had to bring you back because, like we mentioned in the previous conversation, we have a lot of points of interest that we share, and I really want to pick your wise brain about your time as a Disney Imagineer, but also teaching and learning and sharing game design stuff. You've got 3 books out there, and you have been teaching for a while now, so there's lots there I'd love to pull out of your brain, if that's okay.
Sure. I mean, normally I would say go buy and read my books first, but
I did.
Oh, okay. Well, that's it.
But everybody else should too.
Yes, exactly. That's half of the battle. I mean, that's the irony is I wrote those books mainly because I was encountering in the video game world. I was encountering a lot of teams that would ask me the same questions over and over again, and so I'm like, look, I'm just going to write a book, and then you can read the book, and then when we're done, if you have any questions after that, I will be happy to answer them.
Nice. I'll be honest, Your Turn was the book I read first because my heart's board game and tabletop role-playing first, sure, and then video game. So, but then I picked up the other two because the first one was there was so much there. And then I heard about the chili recipes. So there we are.
Yes. Well, the chili recipes, you have to buy multiple versions of Level Up. That's from Level Up, the Guide to Great Video Game Design. Yeah, I make an analogy in the book that I say game design is like making chili, and then I include a chili recipe at the end. And then when I did the second edition, I used a different chili recipe. And now that I'm working on the third edition, I will include a totally different chili recipe. So there's a reason to own all 3 books. Also, for the third edition, I will be doing some different artwork. So I'll be replacing some of the images in the book that I didn't like the first. Like I drew it and went, oh, that's really bad. I have to redraw those. So it might end up with maybe, say, 30 to 40% new content. And I try to, do enough to justify a second edition or a third edition. A second edition had like about the same 30, 40% content, new content. And I'm actually axing some of the appendices from the second edition so I can have more room to fit the longer topics in the third edition. Because a lot of the feedback that I would get from people is they're like, I kind of want you to go a little deeper in some of these topics. And so I'm like, all right, that's fair. Or maybe even cover topics that, weren't around when the book came out. The second edition came out like 10 years ago, and the original edition came out like 15 years ago. So a lot's changed in the industry, and I wanted to address that. I wanted, it's not meant to be an all-encompassing deep dive into everything, but it is meant to cover enough the things that are important in order to help guide the person that reads it in the right direction. And so some of the new things that have gotten added are VR, AR, XR, all that new, relatively new stuff, although it is actually old, a lot of it. I talk a little bit more about monetization. I talk more about a little bit about QA stuff, although the book's emphasis is on game design. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds about, I want to address AI, but I don't want to go into the whole thing about art, using AI art. I want to talk about QA, but I don't want to go into a huge thing about QA, how to QA a game, things like that, right? But I will talk about playtesting, and that's something that I kept meaning to put into the book originally, like a form for playtesting. And I think even Your Turn alludes to it, and for some reason it was left out of the book. So you can use the one from third edition, Level Up, it's, the video game and tabletop testing is moderately similar.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would that when you said that, it came into my brain. I'm curious, between the 3 different books, the 3 different formats, what are those things that you can see the overlap? You can pull them out and go, hey, this belongs in all 3 books.
Oh, well, I tried to avoid that. because I wanted to make each book unique. There's a couple of ideas, like I talk about the theory of unfun, which is my theory that you should start with a fun idea, but as you work on your game, invariably, it's just kind of the nature of the universe that unfun things creep into game design, right? Like you're running into reality. It's really what it is. You have a dream, and the dream is beautiful and golden and perfect, and then you face reality, and reality is a harsh slap in the face. And so, as you are dealing with this reality, you have to find solutions. And the best way to find solutions, in my opinion, is not to go, oh, I want to concentrate on the fun things, but you want to concentrate on the unfun things, or what many people call pain points. And so you want to eliminate that unfun. And in theory, what you should be left with is fun, right? So that's the theory of unfun, is just eliminate the unfun and you'll have the fun. And then I talk about things like the triangle of weirdness, which is a theory that came to me. I was working on a game that was a pretty cool design, but I think it was a little too weird for its own good. And you have to, there's three things that kind of make up a game, and that is what the players are doing, the gameplay, what's the world of the game, kind of the theme, but more importantly, kind of the story and lore, I guess. And then the third is the characters in that world. And it's okay to have one thing be weird. Like you could have a game where it's like, we're a bunch of zombies and we're racing coffin race cars, down a track, right? So that's kind of weird, is that you've got zombies racing coffin race cars down a track. But the world is our world with graveyards and castles. And it's, that's easy. It exists in our world. We understand it. And the actions are you're racing a race car, right? So that again, you understand, the goal of racing a race car is to finish and maybe not fall apart as you race down a hill or something. Don't smack into a tombstone, or something like that. And so that's fine. That will be a perfectly fine game. Matter of fact, that's a design that I've been noodling around with a while. I just have to finish it. But if you start doing something weird where it's like, okay, they're racing coffins, but the world is, everything in the world is made out of jello, and it's, wobbly, and to win, you don't actually win the race. You win the race by just making sure that your coffin doesn't fall apart, right? So it's not really a race; it's more of a stamina thing. So that's like too weird. Like that idea of when you try to explain it to somebody, if you find yourself like, going off into the weeds and it gets strange, that's when you've got problems. And it's really addresses the notion of relatability, that things should have some sort of relatability. Otherwise, people are just going to become either distracted or might even lose interest because it's just too complex a mental idea to grab onto. So you got to give the player kind of hooks to grab onto to understand what you're trying to do. So if you say it's a game, it's a race, I get it. It's a race.
That's smart. How did you come across this? What was the process that you came up with this?
I worked on a video game that was too weird, and I was like, why is this not doing as well as it should? And I kind of looked at it and went, it's too weird. All three of these things are too weird about it. And I started looking at other games that were like that. I'm like, I'm noticing that the games that are successes only have one of these things that are weird, but the ones that aren't have more than one. And so that's where I kind of came up with the idea.
Cool. It's really obvious how passionate you are about this and just how it, like, you watching any of your talks online, you'll see it, but like right now you can really feel it. And I guess I'm curious, when you're sitting down to write books, because I've done technical writing, I do copywriting, I know there's going to be parts of it that are not going to be fun. So how...
Books are hard for me. My favorite quote about writing is that one that it's attributed to Hemingway, but it's actually another guy, and I forget who it is. I attribute him in my book. But it's, writing is easy. All you do is sit down at the typewriter and bleed. Mm-hmm. And that's how it is for me, is I just bleed. but it's like death of a thousand cuts also, right? It's like you've got to get it done. The worst thing about writing, particularly nonfiction, is that you always, like, the second you get done writing, you realize there's something you forgot to put in. And so your impulse is to go back and add it back in. But there's a certain point where it has to go on to an editor, and you're fucked. Like once it gets out there, it's done, it's gone. And so you just have to kind of like go, all right, well, I guess I have to save it for the sequel. And this is terrible, but the first thing I did when I got my copy of Your Turn, is I went through it with a marker and just like marked everything that I was like, I got to add this, I got to change this, I didn't talk about this enough. Oh, I mentioned this appendices that isn't even in the book. Well, that's the editor's fault. They screwed up on that one. But things like that, right? Like I literally have this copy of Your Turn that is just all marked up to hell. That's in anticipation for the second edition, which probably won't happen. If this book does well, it probably won't happen for like another 5 or 10 years. So I've got it. I'm ready. And there'll be other topics I'm sure people want. There'll be some sort of, hey, add liquid fusion hologram game. So why aren't you talking about that? Yeah, because it didn't exist when I wrote my book. So I don't know what the hell liquid fusion hologram games are.
Sounds fun.
Maybe I should invent it. Yeah.
Do it. All right. Well, before we dig too much further in, we can't have a conversation without talking about Disney, some at least. Yeah. So let's back up. You spent some time. You are a Disney Imagineer, and that was one of the things I always wanted to be growing up, so I'm so jealous. But we're going to go past that.
It's like being in the mob. Once you're in, you're in.
Yep.
That's it. Even if you're out, you're in.
You love that. So we've touched on it in our previous conversation, some of the things you've learned while working there, but I want to dig a little deeper. What are some of the things you took away from your time at Disney or your work at Disney that you do that influences your game design and what you teach, and what has made its way into your process?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I think a lot of it, okay, so first of all, I was designing for theme, which is a moderately different way to design things than a board game or a video game. Video game, you can get away with a longer form of content, where you can't necessarily do that with board games, although some people try, and you definitely can't do that with theme park. Well, mostly because theme park has a lot of distractions. So you have to keep things very simple. If you want to do any sort of interactivity, it has to be at about the level of a game that you would play on a playground. So hopscotch or tag or, something like that. Duck, duck, goose. Like think of those types of activities that are physical. They're short. They're, you play rounds of them rather than a whole narrative or something. But the irony is that the Disney Corporation is, particularly Imagineering, is obsessed with story. Now, they have made a very profitable existence based on the notion of storytelling, but I find it's also their Achilles heel, where they sometimes will concentrate too much on story and not on the experience. And therefore they end up with something that kind of falls flat. And interactivity is creeping into theme parks, has been for a while, and some of these companies are not willing to embrace it. I've heard tales of executives at Disney saying, I don't want people to role play at my park. I want them to just watch stuff and ride stuff and buy stuff. And that's not where that industry is headed. It's headed towards LARPing and ARGs, and they're very light versions of these things that exist, and they exist. They Ghost Town Alive at Knott's Berry Farm, the Super Mario World and Harry Potter Land, Hogwarts Land, whatever, at Universal. There are other, unfortunately, it didn't last, but there was the one in Utah called was it Everwood or something like that? That was like a LARPing, fantasy LARPing theme park, which is a shame because it was a very revolutionary idea in this way that it approached the guest and made them part of the show rather than spectators. So I think that the next great theme park is going to be one where, okay, so there's a book that's from the 80s that I've always seen as the guiding star of where theme parks should go. And it's called Dream Park. And it's written by, I always forget who the co-writers, but it's Larry Niven is one of the writers. And I forget who the other writer is. And it's a theme park, but it's a LARPing theme park. And the whole way they describe, this is sci-fi, so it has holograms and it has a lot of mechanisms that would require a lot of effort from somebody to do. Now, I've heard tale of, Scandinavian LARPs that are pretty epic in scope and costuming and things like that. And then you have things like Sleep No More, which unfortunately is going away. But there's a Neverland one, I forget what it's called, like Down the Rabbit Hole or something. But some LARPing person is screaming at the podcast right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, these are things that I think are very interesting where the player or the guest, if you want to use Disney's parlance, the guest will come in and either observe or have touch points to interact with things in the game, which may or may not change the narrative to a slight degree. Now, my biggest problem with these kind of LARPing experiences is that they're very much set to a script, which is great for the performers, but lousy for the players. I'll give you a prime example. So in the little gap we had between COVID and COVID, I went to Knott's, and because I wanted to check out Ghost Town Alive, I had helped work on a project called Legends of Frontierland at Disney. It was play tested there, and it was a big success. And then Disney said what they said, and so one of the fellows who came up with it left. It was so angry that he left and went to Knott's and sold it to Knott's, and it's been a pretty big success ever since. And so I was like, I want to check this out because I'd already done the Frontierland one. I'd worked on it, and so I was like, let's see what Knott's has done. And so we went there, and we immediately kind of fell into the bad crowd. There were like a family of bad guys, and then there was a group of good guys, and we ended up getting kind of like literally the minute we walked onto the property, the bad guy was like, hey, he seemed like a nice guy, but we realized that they were part of this family that was a bunch of thieves. And so we're like, great, we're now robbers. We're now going to be bank robbers. There's a bank in the town, and they were like, oh, look in the bank. We've got look at all this big giant gold nugget that we have. And so we're like, we're going to steal that gold nugget. That's our goal for this thing. And so we had a group there were like 5 or 6 of us. And so we plotted, and there were other little thieveries that you could do along the way, and we helped participate in those. So we're like, great, we're actually, you would help steal this thing, and then you would hide it, and then, make sure the law didn't see what you were up to, and then you would pass it off to one of these cast members, and they would go and stash it away. And you're like, hooray, we're collecting it, right? We're like checking off. I think out of the 9 things you could steal, I think we stole like 6 of them. And we're like, all right, we're going to go after the big prize, which wasn't on the list, which was this gold nugget. So we had orchestrated an entire theft. We had people distracted. We had motives. We had things to kind of bribe. We had to bribe certain cast members to make sure they were on our side. We got all this was, remember, this thing opened at 8 or 9 in the morning. And by like 11 o'clock in the afternoon, we had this whole scheme in place. And so we were ready to do it at like 11:45. That was the time because there was a window in like when the guard would change and, all this stuff. And we're like, this is when we're going to steal it. It's going to happen. And then just as we were about to do this, one of the cast members pulled us aside and went, guys, you can't do this because we need to have this for the plot of the place.
Oh.
And we're like, really? And we're like, oh man, we had this all planned out. We could have stole this. And they're like, yeah, sorry, we have this other plot line. And then it got stolen from other guys. And then the rest of the day, we felt a little adrift. We were like, we can't really do anything to affect any real change. So therefore, why are we going through all this effort, And there was like a whole voting thing. And I'm like, who cares, at this point. And I mean, it wasn't, I hate to sound like I would sour grapes, but it did kind of like, it was still fun. But it's just kind of a bummer that it was like, we couldn't do this big thing. And that's something that I think these experiences suffer from, is that they're on rails. And so if you really want to create a true interactive experience where the players feel like they have some agency, give them agency, let them be able to do these things. And so that's one of the takeaways. It wasn't from Disney I learned this. I learned it from Bots, but it's, it's just, the problem is I don't really work in this medium. Like, I'm not ARG designer. I've worked on them, but I've not been the mastermind to kind of guide the principles. And I don't know if the opportunity will ever arise, but if it does, I'm going to like kind of fight for, let's have like 3 tracks, let's have kind of moments in those tracks where the train can go to the next, to a different direction. And then the cast has to go, okay, we're on track B. Now that's what we do. Right. So that way the player can make these kind of swings in the storyline, and the cast members can feel like, okay, we're not being derailed by it. We know what to do. It's just a different storyline that we're now following.
Do you think having a live GM at the center of the web, pulling strings and paying attention, and it's like, oh, these guys are doing this, let's pull them in with the main plot and add them onto the posse, or like weave it in?
Yeah, I don't know if there was that with Ghost Town Alive. I didn't see anything that pointed towards that, so I don't know. But I would think that, yeah, you would want that. I mean, it's all very Hunger Games, right? Where you have, what's his name, in this control room watching the videos and kind of pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And, that would be cool. I mean, how much fun would that be if you have hundreds of people that you were kind of manipulating around? It's like running an army. But I think, that prospect is also probably pretty daunting. There's kind of, in order to pull it off, I'm sure there's all types of violations of people's privacy or whatever that are happening. Like we had, when we were doing the Disney, we had something that worked through your phone. Mm-hmm. And even that like made people nervous, because you're now like, you're tracking their IP address, right? And so that right there is kind of a big no in some cases. So yeah, you have to be very aware of all these other factors that may or may not allow you to do this. It's, the creative endeavor knows no limits or morals or boundaries, but people's privacy and safety and all that is something that you have to consider, particularly when you're dealing with theme park stuff.
Indeed. When we go to Galaxy's Edge, me and my son will spend whole days, like 2 whole days, playing the game, playing the app on our phones and hacking things and scanning things.
And I mean, my friends made that app. Like, that was originally my project, that what you do on that phone. It's different than what we ended up with. Like, the project that I worked on was called Kudos, and I worked for about a year and a half, and it was in the park, and it was playable, and you could do stuff, and I'm very proud that we were able to get that into the park. But they canceled the project, and then like about a year or 2 later, after I was gone, they were like, wait, this is a really good idea, and we already have the technology in place, so let's bring it back. And I know the people that made, that kind of followed through, and they were like telling me, oh yeah, we kind of used your design stuff as our design principles for this project. But it ended up being a lot of just that, scanning the QR codes, and I've played it, and I don't think it's only okay. It could have been way better. The versions that we came up with, our team, we would have made it much more interesting and exciting. I think it would have been more than just scanning QR codes. But that's what Disney was comfortable doing. I honestly think that their newer kind of version of it, which works with the Magic Band instead of although I don't know why. Like, why is it? Probably just to sell more Magic Bands, I guess. but it's a bounty hunter game. So you go to a door or you go to this, the kiosk, and it says, here's the guy you're looking for. He's behind one of these doors. And then you run and you try, and your thing vibrates and all that. Maybe it was because they couldn't. No, you should make a phone vibrate. I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't have been on a phone. But the thing is, at least this, is that they were doing it on a device. Like, I always thought the big mistake of Kudos and Play was that it didn't have a dedicated device like the Harry Potter ones have. The Harry Potter ones are so much better because they're in fiction. They're everybody knows how to use a wand.
Yeah.
Using a phone is a very different, and you're also, your phone can interrupt you, right? Yeah. You're getting your LinkedIn messages, or you're getting a phone call from your mom or something. And so having it dedicated, they should have made that lady shaver that Qui-Gon uses in episode 1.
Yeah, I do actually.
Indicator.
Yeah.
They should have made that or something like that you buy for $50, and it has a QR code reader, and it has Bluetooth, like an RFID chip in it and stuff like that. And you should be able to then use it to go around and do different things in the world and have things activate. And my friend at Imagineering, although he's not there anymore, unfortunately, his name is Jonathan Ackley, and he did all of the stuff in Florida. There is a whole bunch of experiences where it's in the World Showcase land in Epcot, and it's called, the first one was, what the hell the name was that show? It was like this girl spy, Kim Possible. And then it became a Phineas and Ferb, the platypus, Agent P. It got changed to that. And then he also did a pirate one that is in Adventureland in Florida. But those, I think, that's what it should have been in Galaxy's Edge, is things that pop up, things that animate. You're getting these kind of visceral rewards. Those things exist in Galaxy's Edge, but they're agnostic to your doing this experience on the Play app. Like, there are Dianogas that pop up in the sewer tubes, and there's things like that, but not to the level I would have. I mean, they were probably over budget already, but I would have said, hey, can we squeak out $100,000 more to put in, these kind of things. They don't, most of them are not that expensive, relatively so.
That's an excellent point, to use something that actually integrates with the world and makes you feel like you're still part of it. You're right, though. You can hack the X-Wing and make it turn on and the engines run. And it was a really slow day, and we turned it on and it spooked a couple stormtroopers. That was fun. Like, there was an experience there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example of it, right? Like, that's a better use, way better use of that than just, you scan a box. Okay, congratulations, you get a digital version of a stormtrooper armor, but you have no character that you could dress it up with. Right. You can't wear it yourself. You can't, it means almost nothing, right? Like, it's lip service, and it's a bummer, because it's like, if you think about it, you're like, why am I wasting all my time doing this? It's like, if you have a kid with you, it's kind of fun to watch them get excited. But other than that, maybe they should rent children out at Galaxy's Edge, so that way you're like, hey, if you want to play this game, here's this 8-year-old to do it with. His name's Henry. Go.
That sounds affordable and safe.
Well, it's probably no cheaper than hiring a plaid to, do it with you, right?
That's true. Mentioning Florida, do you think the failure of that Star Wars hotel experience is going to dampen their future efforts in that space?
That breaks my heart, because I have a lot of friends that work. If you watch the video, I know 50% of those people that are the spokespersons for that. So I'm very sad for them. I mean, they did win a Thea, so they've got at least that to bask in. But yeah, it's a little heartbreaking, because part of the people involved were the same people that did Legends of Frontierland. The one of the masterminds of the two masterminds of Legends of Frontierland. Well, Legend of Frontierland was actually meant to be a play test for Star Wars, for Galaxy's Edge. That's why we made it, because we were in a meeting. I was in one of the early meetings about Star Wars Land and the cantina in particular, because that was the thing where like there has to be a cantina. So like you cannot have a Star Wars land without a cantina. So I was in that meeting as like kind of the resident Star Wars nerd. And I was like, you got to be able to do the following things in the canteen. It's this, and you got to play sabacc, and you got to have drinks, and you got to be able to talk to an alien, and you got to hear the band playing and whatever. And so we were like, well, we got to play test this, but we can't do it on property. We can't do it we can't build a whole cantina. That's just ridiculous. I mean, even though they kind of had, which is ironic, like there was an actual, not working, but it was a kind of a bare bones cantina set that they'd built to kind of figure out space and all that. But we were like, we got to play test all these things that we want you to do. And the guy who was in charge of it said, well, Star Wars is essentially just a Western. Why don't we do it in Frontierland? And we'll test everything there. So if you look at the videos of Legends of Frontierland, there's things like you're playing cards, you're getting drinks, you're going on quests, you're throwing your friend in jail, you're going to pet a goat, things like that. And that's moderate, rough approximations of things that we wanted you to be able to do in Galaxy's Edge. And so the playtest started, although I was out. I've had cancer twice, and the first time was right in the middle of all this, which really blew a big hole in my career as an Imagineer. So I was out for 8 months. And so by the time I got back, the playtest was already in full swing. And everybody was like, we want Scott involved. We want Scott involved. But they were like, well, it's already going, and they got me in to write some quests. But my involvement at the end of it was very limited compared to, like, I was like, God damn it, I helped start this. I want to finish it, So I was able to help out a little bit. But in the end, we proved out that all these things were fun and doable. But when it came to Galaxy's Edge, I'm sure that there was worry about, well, maybe people are going to spend too much time hanging out in the cantina, or, they might, like there's a notion called THRC, which I always forget what it stands for, but it's something like total hours of, I don't know, I forget what the RC stands for. But it's essentially how fast you can move people through an attraction. So something like the Haunted Mansion is great because it's just this continuous line of doom buggies that feed people. They call them people eaters. And so they feed people in, and they ride through, and then they jump out as the thing is still moving. Mm-hmm. And out they go, right? That's great. It's, and it chews up, I forget what the statistics are on Haunted Mansion, but there's 64 doom buggies, and I think they hold 2 to 3 people. So do the math. Anyway, but compared to, going into a cantina, sitting down and playing a game of cards with 4 to 6 people for maybe, 20 minutes or an hour, that's bad THRC, right? That's like too slow. That should be, minutes, right? So that's why part of the reason why they did the hotel, because then you could have that. You could have, you have people, 100 people or whatever locked into this location for 2 days. And then it's like, okay, well, we're making our money off of bulk, right? The fact that we're charging ridiculous prices for, whatever X number of people. And so we're going to get a guaranteed amount of, $135,000 a pop a weekend or something like that, right? Which probably still wasn't profitable enough compared to, what the Snow White ride does in terms of capacity and all that, right? So that's probably one of the main reasons why they killed it, is just because it wasn't not enough people, not enough money. And that's always unfortunately, that's the bottom line at the Walt Disney Company, is it's always about how many people can you push through and how much money does that generate.
Did you get a chance to go on it? I never did.
No, it's way too expensive for me. And the irony was, I had a friend of mine who was like, we're going to do it. We're going to go. I'm going to pay for you to go. I know you'd be into it. I know you would like dress up and be in character the whole weekend. So we're going to have you. I want you, and we're going to find 2 other people that are going to be just as into it. And we're all going to go. And he's like, I will pay for your ticket if you pay for the flight. And I'm like, deal. You don't even, I'm done. I don't care what my wife says or whatever. I will find a way to make this happen. And then literally the next week they announced that it was closing down. And then I got sick and I wasn't able to go. I've had many friends go. They've sent me photos. They've sent me, sabacc cards. They bought me the action figures you could get there, but I never got to go and experience it myself. And I don't know how much I would. I watched the recent Jenny. Well, I always forget what her last name is, but the long 4-hour why this was a failure video. And while she makes some very valid points, I just also feel really bad because I know how much, I don't know if my friends who did this will ever get a chance to do anything like this again. And it's too bad because the idea is good. I just think they made some fundamental mistakes. And for me, it was, one, the cost was just too prohibitive for the average Star Wars fan like myself. And two is, and this is more just Disney in general, and I know why they did this, is I don't like the sequel era theming. Kylo Ren and Rey they're not my Star Wars. I want Darth Vader and Luke and all that. But I know why they did it, because when I was at Imagineering was when we bought Star Wars. So I was there in 2012 or whatever. And when we bought it, all the Imagineers were like, hell yeah, let's do it. We started pitching stuff to our bosses, and they were all original trilogy things, because we're like, I want to shoot a stormtrooper, I want to use a lightsaber, I want to fly in the Millennium Falcon, I want to go into the cantina, all the things that you do in the first, 3 movies. Yeah. And then when Iger pivoted internally, like the public didn't see this at all, but he said, no, we're putting all this money into these sequels. That's what we're going to do. We want everything to be about the sequels because that's where we're putting our money. We've just spent $4 billion on this. I'll be damned if we give Uncle George more royalties or something. Who knows? But I'm sure there is money related. But part of it was just, this is what we're working on. This is what we're building. Therefore, that's what it's going to be. And it makes sense. I don't begrudge them that at all. But, if I had spent the $4 billion, I would feel the same way. But I still think it was a mistake. I still think Galaxy's Edge should be era agnostic. It should, have, Luke Skywalker show up in R2-D2 and or even Anakin and Obi-Wan in the clone armor, clones and stuff. And, just, have it be a celebration of Star Wars. I mean, the idea of you're going to this place and you're role playing that you're in this universe. The thing is, the rest of Disneyland isn't really like that, except for really diehards like myself who pretend like they're going on Star Tours and you're you're part of, Star Wars Galaxy, or you're pirate, whatever. I mean, I've never dressed up to be a pirate in the Pirates of the Caribbean, so there's, I guess, a limit to it. But the ask is to make maybe Tom Sawyer's Island is the closest thing. Pirate's Lair, right, is the closest thing. Hey, come on this island and be a pirate. But that the park isn't set up for that. It's the majority of it is you're a guest, you're watching, you're writing, you're buying. And then you walk into this land and it says, all right, well, not only are you walking, writing, buying, but now you can be somebody. And I don't know if the average consumer is prepared for that. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a big ask. Unless you walk into those gates at the front of the park and they say, all right, for today, you're not yourself. You are somebody else. Like what Evermore. That was the name of the one in Utah. What Evermore did, right? Then I could buy it. A Harry Potter kind of does it in a smart way where they allow you to buy robes and wand, and now you're a wizard. You can't, the problem with Galaxy's Edge is you can't wave a lightsaber around. They won't let you. So therefore, even if you put on Jedi robes, you won't feel like a Jedi. Or you can't do the hand motion and open a door. You can't wave a lightsaber around, right? You can't have fights in the street, which would be awesome. And so by that aspect of it being, you're using your own phone to play the games, not some special device. By removing that aspect of the role play, lessens the likelihood that people would role play. Now there's diehards. There are people, I see people there, that I have friends that dress up as, rebel soldiers and Count Dooku and stuff like that. And they'll go into that place and play. They don't give a damn, right? But they're outliers. They're not the average consumer.
And it's falling on them to create the game. Like, it sounds like the divide here is Disney's creating more of a passive narrative experience where you're taking in a story as opposed to participatory art that's allowing you to be part of the story.
Right. There's as far as I know, there's no overall narrative arc to Galaxy's Edge. Like, there are characters in there that are doing things.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I cannot predict when those things would happen. And I think that kind of, like, you have to stumble on stuff. And I've stumbled on stuff, and it's fun when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not predictable. And that's a problem too. But then again, if it was predictable, then you'd have these huge crowds of people waiting for something, like waiting for the parade to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, do we want, this place isn't built for that. It's meant to be a simulation of a place, not a simulation. Like, even Disneyland is ill-equipped for the crowds that gather for the fireworks and the parade, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Been in the middle of that before.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's put a pin in Disneyland for today. Maybe we'll do that again sometime. There's so much more there. But
oh, yeah.
We talk about the things that you've learned through your work and the things you've created. But an interesting question that isn't always asked is, what have you learned from teaching? Because you've been an instructor, a teacher at the New York Film Academy.
Yeah. And at USC.
Right. And USC, that's the other one. So what are some of the things you've learned from the act of teaching?
I have learned that teaching is a great second job. I have a on and off again relationship with teaching. I like the act of instructing. I like interacting with the students, but I hate the mechanisms of the education system. I hate giving tests. I have certain classes where I will never give tests, but I will do projects instead. I think projects are a better way to act, an active learning rather than a regurgitation of facts. That doesn't interest me. And I know just by experience that you don't learn that way. It's not, most people don't learn that way. And they resent it. They don't like doing that. I learned that it is possible to teach remotely, but I dislike it. I much like playing board games, I prefer teaching in person just because it allows you to kind of riff, less of a structured instructor and more of a, let's go off on tangents. And it's kind of like, how I talk on podcasts.
Right on.
And I learned that teachers do a lot of work that the students never see. And most of the time, they're never compensated for it, which sucks. Like, I have written a lot of syllabi and lectures for classes that I've never got paid for, and it's so what I do is I monetize those. I go out to other places and I say, all right, I will have all these, which one do you want to hear? Here's my rate, but which one? I have all these different ones to choose from. What do you want to hear? Right. So that in the end, I'm able to turn it into my favor, and have these things under my belt. But the actual genesis of them, it was a sunk, cost for me.
When new students wander into those classes, what are some of the more common misconceptions or ideas that you see with young students that you have to beat out of them?
Well, the most common misconception is that just because you like to play games doesn't mean you're good at making them. And I, as an educator, am very frustrated with the fact that by law, I cannot grab a student by the shoulders and shake them and go, this is not for you. You should leave now and not waste your time and not waste your money. But of course, I'm not there to do that. I am there to dispense education. And so no matter how terrible you are at doing this, I will still try my best to educate you. And it doesn't always work. But I've had some students go on to do some good things and some things that I'm proud of. And so that way I can brag about it. But I've had many other students that just, some of them fall away. They just don't go into gaming, which I always feel bad about, because I'm like, you spent all this money on an education and you're not using it. The irony is I spent a lot of money on my education, and I'm probably only partially using, what my degrees are. There's no, when I was in school, there was no degree for game design. So, but I use stuff, I have a film degree and an art degree. So I create art, and I still use the film and screenwriting techniques. But anyway, so yeah, it can be frustrating. And that's the reason why I'm not doing it right now. So I got a little burnt out on doing it. I kind of also felt like I was on autopilot. I think that teaching, I might go back to it again in this, not the near future, but in the future when I'm a little older. And that's the problem, of course, is the video game industry is extremely ageist. And so even though the majority of skilled workers are much older, like myself, the people that end up running the companies are younger, and they don't want, because usually older people command a higher price. I think that's a big part of it. But so there's going to be a point where I will not be able to get work in the video game industry at all. Now, the whole video game industry is exploding anyway, so nobody can get work in it right now. Unfortunately, it's very hard to, and that's a huge problem that needs to be solved as well, because this art form isn't going away anytime soon. But there has to be better solutions to how to fund it, because if the people that aren't funding it, where is that money coming from?
Well, good thing you can do board games and tabletop games too, then.
Why do you think I went into doing board games and tabletop stuff? Is to try to get away from video games, right? Like the writing was on the wall even back in 2015 or 17.
I gotcha. Well, it's kind of starting to get close to the end here. Let's talk about something not quite as exciting. I mean, I'm curious. I want to pick your brain because you have a lot of experience. On the flip side of the creative stuff, how important is it for a designer to understand the business side of game creation?
Extremely important, because there are certain things that you can take advantage of. Well, first of all, it's very important to understand, I think, how games are produced, in that you can figure out like what something would cost, and then you can design to that. Because I think that you're going to have more success if you keep things affordable. And then you can go to a publisher and go, look, this game is really only just a deck of cards and some tokens. And that's going to be a lot more appealing than some massive Awakened Realms monstrosity, right? And but it might not. Like, it might be appealing to Awakened Realms or something like that, right? Because that's what they do. But, I have learned to kind of keep things lean, to try to always kind of keep that in mind. I'm much more of an additive designer than subtractive. And so if anything, I will, I might look for ways to, how can I make it nicer without changing much of the game? So I'm doing this game right now with this little wind-up monster, knocks over buildings. But there's certain elements in the game that I can plus up. I can make them look nicer or make them more quality components that don't change the game, and they don't really affect the cost too much either. So I have something that I'm trying to learn with each. I'm doing these little kind of bespoke games, and with each game, I'm trying to teach myself something with it. So the first time I was like, all right, how do I deal with a factory to like make a custom meeple or make a custom board out of cloth? And then this new one is, how do I get all these components into a certain size box? And how do I make that box relatively inexpensive? So, because the box is usually the most expensive part of the game. And also, how do I do an economic game? It's my other challenge, because I've never done one before. And so the next one after that will probably be some other things that I'm trying to learn, So I don't want to ruin the surprise of what I'm planning.
No, don't do that.
But anyway, So yeah, and I'm also learning how to like get products shipped out to people, and how do I get it out there without them being destroyed, in the mail. So there's things like that that I'm trying to teach myself. So those are good lessons for young designers. And then, of course, you really should try, creative people are not great at business traditionally. I'm not great at business traditionally, but I have educated myself enough about contracts and how to not get screwed over. And that's in your term. There's a whole chapter about contracts and about the business pitch and things like that. And I hope that there's enough in there that people will benefit from the knowledge that I'm dispensing to them. I could go deeper, but these books, they usually have a page limit of some sort. So I can only go on so long.
There's a lot in there. Don't.
That's good.
Yeah, no, there is.
That's good. I'm glad. I mean, people seem to like it. They're leaving reviews that are very flattering, but I need more reviews. I only have 19 so far, and I need like 50 before the Amazon algorithm recognizes the book as something that's worth promoting. So if you're out there and if you have read Your Turn, first of all, thank you very much for buying it and reading. Please leave a review on Amazon or some other e-tailer because it really helps us authors.
Yes, do that right now. Well, not right now. As soon as we're done, do that.
You're done listening.
I'm curious. How did you source? How are you sourcing wind-up monsters or dinosaurs, or like? How are you sourcing that component?
They're cheaper than you think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, they're already made. It's not a bespoke piece. It's not my own design. It's something that. Now I played around with the idea of, should I add pieces to it like stickers or repaint the eyes or something like that? And in the end, I just kind of was like, that's a bit of effort that I don't know. I'm still on the fence about it. I haven't decided yet, but I'm kind of on the fence about like, do I want to do this or not? Now, the thing that's key, that's making me go, do I want to do it or not? Yes, is that there's only like 25 of them I'm making. So if it was more than that, I'd be like, no way, that's like too many. But because there's so few of them, it might still happen. But yeah, it's, I mean, the inspiration for the game came from the thing. Like I was like, I don't know what this game is going to be, but it's going to have this wind-up monster in it.
That's
right.
Cool.
That's how I've been like kind of pitching my games is I'm like, I don't know what this game is going to be, but it's going to have a ghost people and dice in it. And then I made Escape from Rodder Manor or Mansion. Right. And so now I have this, this new one. Oh no, There Goes Tokyo is the name of it. And then the next one will be something else. And I'll probably reach out to a bigger audience for that. I might go, 50 people and try to do that. Right. And see if I can get 50 people to pay for these crazy ideas. Cause I still have people that are like, oh, I missed it. I didn't know about it. I'll be like, sorry, next time, keep an eye out on my page because then I'll promote it, but I'm having fun doing it. It's a great exercise. I love chronicling the progress because that people find that extremely helpful. And so I've done it in the, oh no, There Goes Tokyo is so much going on into it that I have like, it's going to take 2 parts to kind of explain, it might even take a third. I don't know. But I'm kind of literally in the middle of the production of it right now. I'm playtesting it. I'm going to playtest it a lot more. Next weekend, I'm going to go to my friendly neighborhood store and have people play it. And yeah, I mean, I just need to start getting back out there and getting, doing the things that game designers need to do. That's the other important thing, of course, is that you have to have your games played by humans because you can only solo play it so much and kind of guess what people would do. And then, of course, they do things that surprise you and you're like, wait, that's not what I intended. So
that's a really important point is get your game in front of people as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Iterate, learn.
Other people use the term fail faster, which I get what they're going for, but I don't really like the term that much. It's not failing to have your game break. It's you're reforging. It's part of the process. It's like making a sword. You bang on the sword and you keep banging on it until it's what it is, and that's how I view. I'm not, I have a bad play test. I might feel bad, but it's not a failure, because the things that make me feel, the things that people are pointing out that are making me feel bad, it's just my pride that's being tweaked, right? I'm like, all right, there's things that are wrong with it. It's against what I thought it would be. Okay, well, I got to just kind of nut up and admit that was not the best way to go, and go in the direction that the people are pointing you towards. They're helping, it's not a bad thing.
I love that. I would much rather use the term forge, or the analogy of forging, as opposed to failure or iteration.
How about forge faster? Maybe I should
go
copyright
make
my own book or something. That's
if only.
Well,
books.
If other people have done that, and they're out there and they're good products, but like I said, I would much rather put a positive spin on it.
Amen. All right, well, we're going to start moving towards the end here. I did have an idea for a way to take this out, but I don't know if it depends on whether or not. I guess the question is, as design director at Game Breaking Studios, do you work with a team now? Like, the things that you've learned and taught over the years, do you have a chance to mentor now? Do you have a chance to share that?
There are people I'm mentoring, but I don't have a team per se yet. And that's one of the things that we're trying to rectify. But we're also in a place that we're trying to shore up our business. So we're looking for more clients. So if anybody is out there who needs co-dev, co-development, and particularly in the engineering side, that's what our company specializes in. Although we do, we offer design support through me and a couple other folks on the team, and we offer QA support, which is something that a lot of people need. And so, but our goal is to get to a point where we have a game team of some sort, whether it's a core group of people coming up with the design and then outsourcing the art and outsourcing, the other aspects to it, or it's something that's in-house. That, that's gonna probably be determined within the next year or so. So unfortunately, I'm not doing a lot of design work right at the moment. I kind of wish I was, but whatever helps keep the boat afloat, and it's all hands on deck at this point.
Gotcha. Well, I was going to ask about bringing the focus on mentoring, but maybe that'll be another podcast. Maybe we'll have another chat another time. I'll just keep bringing you back over and over again.
I'm happy to come back.
All right. Well, I have asked you the core question, my philosophical question at the core of my podcast before, so I had to dream up something new for you today. So
that's the danger of having a repeat question.
I love it. It's making me stretch. So here's my question. My philosophical question for you today is, how can we ensure that the stories and games we're creating are offering a chance to positively influence society?
Interesting. So first of all, your timing is excellent, because I just went to a event that is held in LA that is called Imagine Ne'er-Do-Wells. And this is a ticketed event that you can go to. It's mostly people in the themed entertainment business are the people that go to it. And they have a question that you're supposed to answer, where they say, design a game or experience or something that helps make the world a better place. Right. Now, at the event, usually the silliest ones win. Right. My problem is I always take it too seriously. So I had designed something that essentially was Pokemon Go, but instead of you capturing digital Pokemon, you were going to trash cans, and you would scan the trash can and a monster would pop up, and it would essentially be like, feed me, Seymour. And you had to find all the trash that was kind of strewn about the ground and throw it into the trash can, and the monster would eat it, and you get points, and then you could trade in the points for things like sodas and candy. So that way you had more trash to recycle, right? Or you could leave it on the ground, I guess, for someone else to recycle. But the ones that were winning, someone else came up with a very similar idea, which was called something like "There's Only One Planet of the Apes." Usually punny or clever titles also do well in this thing. And it was, people would go out with trash bags and those sticks, and they would collect garbage, and whoever was collecting the least garbage was being chased down with person in ape mask, all like in the Planet of the Apes, right after the humans. And so it would kind of like scare you into collecting more trash, like that kind of thing, right? And then there was some sort of prize for whoever had the most trash at the end of the thing. And I was like, God damn it, that's a much funnier idea than my, I'm taking it too seriously Pokemon Go thing. But back to your question of how you can make gaming a better place is thinking about what the problems are. What are the problems in the world, and how you can resolve it. Like pick one thing and try to see if you can make an impact in it, right? Whether it's cleaning up trash, whether it is trying to get people to socialize more and treat other people more like humans. Maybe you have some sort of game where you go out and interact with your neighbors, right? And make cookies or something, and get them to tell you one thing about themselves or something like that. They say that the survival rate of people, like if we ever had an apocalypse, your survival rate is higher if you're friends with your neighbors than if you're by yourself, right? Hopefully we won't ever have an apocalypse. So I don't think I would fare well. I would rather just go in the big nuclear cloud than have to be like Mad Max or something. So it's but the most important thing to remember is it has to be fun first. Like if you're trying to do something educational or, trying to make the world a better place through games, that's great, but it still has to be fun. Because if it's not, then people are going to be like, man, it's boring. I don't want to do it. And then it seems like work, or it seems like an obligation. And that's a bad place to be, right? So you got to always think about, how do I make this fun? What is the most fun thing I can do? And then you can put the message into it.
Love it. Brilliant. That was a great answer.
It's not brilliant. It's just common sense, I guess.
Well, if only there were more common sense out there then. That brings it close to the serious stuff. So as we head towards the door here, I'd like to do a quick fire again. I got some new ones for you.
All right, let's do it.
Do you listen to stuff while you're working? And if so, what do you listen to?
Depends on the type of work. If I am designing a game, sometimes I will watch other reviews of games so I can see if there's any similarities and if they've solved problems in certain ways. Or if, or my game might be too close to it, right? I don't want my game to be, congratulations, you've, invented a game that already exists.
Right.
Next thing is, if I'm writing, I can't listen to anything with words. It just is too distracting. So I'll listen to the soundtrack. Matter of fact, in your turn, it has a whole list of composers that I thank for, composing. Mostly it's movie soundtracks, things like, Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And I've listened a lot to the soundtracks of Wes Anderson films are really good. So things like that. Spider-Man films, the new Marvel Spider-Man films have good soundtracks. So yeah, so that's when I'm writing. If I have to compose words, I do it. And I find myself like this, writing Your Turn was very tough and took a little longer than it should have. And part of it was because I wasn't doing what I knew I should do, which is put on the headphones and listen and just focus in. And so that's how I know I can get stuff done. And then if I'm doing, usually when I'm driving, or sometimes if I'm puttering around, like doing the dishes or something, I'll listen to podcasts. But I've been listening mostly to horror podcast, like horror movie review podcasts. Like there's a couple. One is called Fun with Horror that my friend Scotty Cross and his buddy Andrew do. Another one called Dead Meat. That's a couple that does horror movies. And then my favorite is called With Gorley and Rust, which is Matt Gorley, who's done a lot of podcasting stuff, and his partner, his friend Paul Rust, who they are like kind of mellow. Like they talk about horror movies, but they're very mellow about it. But they're also very informed. I mean, all three of them are educational. And what's interesting is you can listen to a podcast about the same movie and get different stuff out of it. So those are my three favorite right now. I don't really listen to role-playing games. I kind of find it a little annoying, actually, to listen to role-playing games and podcasts. And I don't do any of that crime stuff, It's too dreary for my taste.
You don't listen to Bill Roper's live action role playing?
I love Bill, and I would much rather play a game with Bill than listen to a podcast with Bill.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Both Bill and Stu were old friends of mine, but I sorry guys, I don't listen. Does that make me a bad friend?
All right. Well, speaking of gaming, what game world, game universe is your favorite? And it could be tabletop, it could be a digital game, board game.
It's probably the Star Wars universe. I mean, even if I don't like the content per se, I still like the world, and I'm always interested in the world and what they do, and there are contradictions and they annoy me, but whatever, get over it. It's just entertainment.
There you go. Okay, last quick fire. If your essence could be perfectly boiled down and injected into a game world, so a digital game table, again, whatever, A, what game world would you be in? But more importantly, what race or class or role or what would your character be?
Well, the character thing is, it's just boring because I always play a human. I'm not, for some reason, I don't need to play another thing. I'm not like, even though I could, I don't really, I'm playing a fair amount of Fortnite, and all I'm doing is just, I have a Boba Fett skin and I just wear that. And that's just a guy in a suit. I could be anything. I could be a banana. I could be, whatever. And I don't. I'm like, I'll just be Boba Fett, What world of it? Well, like so many of the game worlds are so violent. I don't want to be in, I don't want to be in Helldivers 2 universe. I don't want to. That's horrible. That's a horrible universe. I don't want to be in Team Fortress 2. That's a pretty horrible universe too. Everybody gets killed. I would probably want to be in. I probably want to be in something like Leisure Suit Larry, or something like that, because at least you're like, well, maybe I'd have a chance with a hot girl, but more likely I'd be like Leisure Suit Larry and just not like, it just wouldn't work out. So it's just kind of like the real world. Although, I mean, maybe like Monkey Island is kind of a fun world to be in. I don't want to be in anything that is like cruel or mean. I don't need, I go online and I see people going like, oh, I would love to live in the Warhammer 40K universe. So I'm like, are you insane? That's no way. You want to last 5 minutes in it. And B, it's a horrible universe. I mean, it's great to play. I love the games. I like playing the miniatures and painting the miniatures and all that, but there's no way in hell I'd want to. It's just terrible.
You'd just be meat for the machine.
Yeah, exactly. You'd end up being a severed head in an armored suit.
I'm wondering how many people are right now looking up Leisure Suit Larry.
Yeah.
And I'm the same in Fortnite. I've had the Raven skin on since it first came out years ago, and I've never bothered to change. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's two reasons why I do the Boba Fett. One is that's what got me to play again. I was like, it was Star Wars week, and I'm like, well, maybe they'll have some special skin or something. And I'm like, Boba Fett, that's my favorite. That's my boy. Yeah. So that's number one. But two, the newer Boba Fett suit is darker and it's green. So it actually makes for good camouflage. So I use it quite a lot to like hide next to trees or in shrubbery. And I like to snipe. So I'll be a sneaky bastard and hide in a shrub, and then people won't see me and I'll just shoot at them. They'll be like, they'll figure it out. And then I have to run, go somewhere else. But yeah, it works well for me.
All right, we're going to start heading for the door, but I do like to open up a little space here to signal boost, to promote what you got going on. We've mentioned a couple times now, but hit me with it.
All right. Well, here, let me reach.
I should have mine near me too, but I don't.
I saw it on the shelf. I see the green. There's a reason why I make my books those unusual colors so they stand out.
One's right there.
Okay, so I had a big pile of Lorcana. All right, so first of all, if you want to do video games, it's Level Up. It doesn't say Volume 3. This is my editing copy, but this is Level Up, the Guide to Great Video Game Design. It is the best video game book you will ever read with a chili recipe in it. That's that. And then my new one is called Your Turn, the Guide to Great Tabletop Game Design. This is, all about, if you want to learn all about tabletop games, and it has in it, what I'm really proud about is not only is it a good little history book and it's a good little theory book, but it has a workshop where you can make 6 board games of your own. So if you're interested in making board games, even if you're a veteran, and you need to kind of just fire up the old creativity, I highly recommend you reading Your Turn. And then, there's games that I still get royalties from, Alien Fated in Nostromo, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I have 2 games coming up. I don't know when their release dates are, but one is called Diamonds and Dinosaurs, which is a fun little game that I designed with my son. And then another game called Castle Climbers, which I designed with my daughter, and they are also doing the artwork for it. And those will probably come out either late 2024 or early 2025. But you can find web pages for them on BGG and kind of follow the progress there.
I know.
And then, of course, check out my Facebook. So if I do another one of these crazy bespoke games, which I will, you can get in on it and get a cool little game for that only a limited number of people will ever own.
Right on. They'll have to fight me for it. I'll have the links in the comment or show notes or wherever the linkity-doos go. They will be there. I'm curious, have you ever heard of people using Your Turn in education settings? Like you mentioned the part where you can build board games. That'd be perfect for a small group of children.
It's pretty new. It work for adults too.
But
it's pretty new as of October. So I don't know if people have started to incorporate it into their curriculums yet. I know that Level Up is. I've actually met several teachers that are like, yeah, we have like a whole course based on it. And then I also know there are these 2 gals from Iraq or Saudi Arabia or somewhere where they did a bunch of YouTube videos just walking through the chapters of the book, So yeah, Level Up has gotten a lot of love, and I'm very happy and grateful for that. I'm hoping that Your Turn. I mean, based on the initial response, I'm already seeing people just responding very well to it. So I'm hoping to see more, as people discover it and read it, then hopefully I'll see the net result of their games that they've created and all that good stuff.
Wonderful. All right. Well, that, my friend, is that. So we're going to head out the door, but as I push you out into the cold, I'm curious, do you have any parting words of wisdom? Final word.
I just tell people to play more games, never turn your nose up at playing a game, and make games, just keep making, right? Like never stop making games, even if they're not good, you learn something from them. And that's how you grow as a game designer, is by trying things out. And if they don't work, then you move ahead and do something else.
The final die has been cast, the maps are packed away, and the books have been safely stowed. So it's time for me to show you the door. Before we all turn in for the night, I'd like to thank Scott for sharing his insights and wisdom. And as always, to you, dear listener, thank you for taking your spot at the table. Until we meet again, remember, keep exploring, creating, and sharing your stories with the world. Stay safe, Wanderer. Your chair will be ready by the fire the next time you stop in at the Corner of Story and Game.